professor blamed capitalism for deaths during slavery. Anthony Zenkus, who teaches graduate social work classes at Columbia University, made the remark and claimed that Hitler was a capitalist. He tweeted, "Odd how you forget the millions who died under #capitalism, the 2 world wars, centuries of slavery, and the genocide of Native Americans. But they didn't think that was cool either." Zenkus's faculty profile describes him as a racial justice, climate justice, and income inequality activist. Former Vice President Al Gore trained him as a Climate Reality Project presenter. And Zenkus has also participated with Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter. Anthony Zenkus isn't a historian, so what he says about history only reflects the distorted, Marxizing history generally adopted by unthinking reflex among progressives. David Randall, a research director at the National Association of Scholars, told Campus Reform. His tweet is most important for revealing how important it is that history get taught right. The professor has given a TED Talk called How Capitalism Negatively Affects Development and also expressed his views regarding Arizona Senator John McCain. All you liberal robots who thought John McCain is a decent human being, that piece of crap, voted against giving Martin Luther King a holiday. Zenkus tweeted Tuesday, "Screw you and your racist heroes."
Trust or faith to those who bend the knee to the underlying hate that you helped create. So sit back.
So now it is time for me to give my opinion. Let me just say that I am not a history professor, so I'm probably just as credible to talk about history as this guy is, so I think it's fair. So let me read his tweet and we're gonna work backwards, basically dismantling it. Odd how you forget the millions who died under capitalism, the 2 world wars, centuries of slavery, and the genocide of Native Americans. Bet they didn't think that was cool either. So let's work backwards. Let's start with the Native Americans. Basically what he's conflating is free market and capitalism, and conflating government policy and capitalism. Most advocates of capitalism are not advocates of government policy. Most capitalists are advocates for free market capitalism, meaning the government stays out of it, which is the exact opposite of what happened with the Native Americans. And let's get history straight. Were there corporations that benefited from these government policies? Yes, and that is called cronyism. But let us get one thing straight. The Trail of Tears was not a capitalist policy. The Trail of Tears was a government policy. By the way, a person who played a major part in the Trail of Tears was the Democrat Andrew Jackson. So I want to make that extremely clear. Now, he's saying, basically what he's saying is that capitalism is for profit, which is only part of the definition. Capitalism are private industries, or the private takeover of the means of production for profit. Not government seizes the means of production for profit, because that would be a mixed economy or a socialist economy. So the government saying, hey, we're going to indoctrinize Native Americans and pretty much exterminate their culture, has nothing to do with capitalism. It is possible for government institutions which are not private to have an incentive. Most governments have incentives to do things, which would be profit, which would include resources, water, land. You profit in a way. You profit somehow. But that is not capitalism. Once more, free market capitalists are against government policy that would enslave people. Now, that's not to say that private businesses back then didn't exploit government policy by having slaves or killing Native Americans to get rid of competition. That's called cronyism and not free market capitalism. So that brings us directly to slavery. Once more, the free market is not slavery. Capitalism is not slavery. Capitalism didn't lead to slavery. Did business profit off of slaves? Duh, of course they did. But slavery wasn't free market policy, it was government policy. It was the government's protecting institutions of slavery. And one example of this is to bring up the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who both reluctantly owned slaves. They inherited slaves. They inherited plantations that had slaves. And at one point, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison even tried to free their own slaves. And James Madison actually pushed for the abolition of slavery to be in the Constitution of the United States during the Virginia Plan, and wasn't able to do that. They both tried to free their slaves, but they couldn't because the government made it illegal. Private industries didn't make it illegal at all. It's kind of like a good example of this is Google and, well, we'll say Google today. They're a private industry and they profit, right? They exist for profit. Duh. But they're also in cahoots with governments, especially Democrats mostly. They get benefits from regulation, so there's really no big competition because it's so hard for anybody to start a competing business because Google almost has a monopoly on it, which is due to regulation, not due to free markets. Now, it's not directly related to slavery, but they are able to discriminate against white people and Asians. Sorry, white males and Asian males. And when I say Asian, I don't mean the politically correct term for Middle Easterners who commit terrorist acts, but Asians as in Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, anybody who moves here and tries to make a better life for themselves. So let's talk about the two world wars. He basically tries to say that because Henry Ford, the Ford Motor Company, worked with Adolf Hitler or sold products to Adolf Hitler, that the world wars are somehow a capitalist war. Now, it's true that World War I was the war to end all wars, basically colonial wars, anything you could think of. Now, these governments did profit, but these governments aren't capitalist. They are existing for profits, like every government in the world that tries to expand or do anything. They do try to profit for resources, land, you name it. But the private industry didn't build up an army and go oppress people. The private industry, people got rich off of government policy. That's how it works. That's not capitalism. These are government policies. Free market capitalists, let me close off saying this. Free market capitalists are generally against government policies because government policies lead to the genocide of cultures, lead to the slavery of people, whether they're black or white. Slavery still exists in this world today, especially in Africa. Black people having black people as slaves. That's just how it is. It's horrible, it's heinous, it's horrific. However many words I can describe it that are basically similes or synonyms, excuse me. Slavery exists, and institutions at the time do take advantage of government policy. Government policy. Capitalists, free marketeers are usually against government policies, which leads to the oppression of people. This was Logan from Renegade Slogan Media. Have a good one.